Hello class, we're going to call this our 6320 APA help. I'm going to try to make this a very short video where I try to go through the specific things that most students made mistakes on for our very first assignment. So before we even get started, the first thing I want you to do is pause this video. If you do not have a copy of your first assignment in front of you, go ahead and either pull that open or print it out. Have access to that because throughout this video I'm going to ask you a few questions along the way, and it will be helpful if you can reference your own paper so you can see perhaps where the mistakes were. Okay, so I hope you have your paper in front of you. The very first thing I want to make sure everyone understands, we are using the 6th edition of the APA manual. If you do not have a copy of this book yet, you will need to find one, borrow one, check one out of the library, check to see if in your own school library, if your librarian has access to one. But this is going to be very helpful throughout this entire program. For most of you guys, this is the very first course you're taking in our LIBM Library Media program, and if you don't have access to a manual, it is going to be in your best interest to go ahead and locate one. But in the meantime, sometimes it's helpful just to be able to look at a sample paper and see perhaps where some of the things should be in the formatting that maybe you just kind of overlooked a little bit when you were putting yours together. So that brings me to a very helpful website. If you have not checked out the Purdue OWL website and located, there is a sample paper. Now I realize most of the time we are not doing a fully APA formatted research paper that is going to include statistical analysis and where you're going to have sample populations and you're going to have a full literature review and tons of different things in the appendix. But one of the most helpful things is just to be able to see how the format should look for your in-text citations, for your reference list, what the heading should look like, and even the title page and some of the other elements that you will include in many of the different papers throughout this program. Before I take you to the sample paper, I've gone ahead and taken you to the actual website. The Online Writing Lab is what OWL stands for, and it is put together by Purdue University, and it's a free service for, the writing lab of the students at Purdue, members of the community, but also users of the World Wide Web. So it is free for you guys to access and be able to look through and locate information to help you write your paper. Over on the left, you'll notice there are several different menu items. You may, specifically click on a menu item that interests you, but eventually you may want to locate the sample paper. So the first thing to notice when you do pull open the sample paper, you will have green boxes and you will have blue boxes. And if you've taken the time to read through, the green boxes take you through the explanation of the APA style guideline. The blue box shows the directions for writing and citing in APA style. So it starts off with a green box over here. The title should summarize your paper's main idea and identify the variables under discussion and the relationship between them. Now for most of ours we won't have variables, but your title should be longer than just merely Assignment 1 Professional Topic. The blue part does show you, the formatting. It should be centered on your paper, typed in 12-point Times New Roman font. If you don't remember anything at all, always stay consistent with your font. Best to just stick with that 12-point and Times New Roman. It should not be bolded, underlined, or italicized. Your name should be on there, and also the institution name, so University of Central Arkansas. And those should be double-spaced and centered. And one other thing to make sure that you notice, the running head. Many of you guys included a running head. If you are going to include elements of an APA formatted paper, please make sure that you do so and always have your format correct. So a couple of things to notice about the running head. The running head is a shortened version of the paper's full title. It's going to be used to help readers identify the titles for published articles, but even if your paper is not intended to be published, go ahead and include a running head. The running head can't exceed 50 characters, including spaces and punctuation. It should be in all caps. Again, on the second and third pages and any other subsequent pages, you will have a different, you don't need the words running head anymore, but you'll continue with those actual varying definitions of online communication. So if I go back up to the top, there it was. And notice that your title itself was much longer, so for a running head, it needs to be a shortened version. So look at your paper at this point in time. Notice if you have a running head, if yours is done correctly or not. Now for our first assignment, I did not expect you guys to have an abstract. Very few people did put one in, and when they did it, it was correct. In the future, just always check through the guidelines. If it does not mention an abstract and you wonder if your instructor requires one or not, go ahead and ask. It's always a good idea to ask. But for this paper, I did not expect you to have one. For the next part, many of you guys did a very good job. You had your numbers in the top right corner for each page. You also did a good job of starting with a title. It was centered. It was not bolded. So most of you guys did a very good job with that part. For in-text citations, many of you guys did a very good job. You needed the last name of any of the authors. This one happened to have 4, the year, close your parentheses, and a period after. Now, if you did want to say, Cummings et al., and you had your 2002 in there, you can also begin your sentence with a person's name. There were a few of the entries that I noticed that when you guys went to cite or to do an in-text citation, you merely inserted the web address, which that is incorrect. So check yours, go through and see, and if you merely just inserted in a web address, you need to look to find out how to cite a website. It is a good idea throughout a paper to go ahead and have headings. So typically level 1, level 2, and perhaps level 3 are probably the most that you would ever need. For a level 1 heading, those are your basic sections. You would center it. It should be bolded. It should start with a capital letter, and then it will also have lowercase letters. So that would be title case. Now if you're going to use a level 2 within, each main section, then you would flush that to the left of the margin. It's still bolded, and it's still in that title case as well. When you get to level 3, it's indented a 1/2 inch from the left margin. It's still bolded, and this time you only capitalize the first word if you have more than one. And finally, for the end, the majority of the mistakes were very minor, but they're still necessary to fix now rather than going all the way through the process and finding out at the end that you had some inconsistencies. So the very first thing you need to do, if you read the blue box at the bottom, start the reference list on a new page. Always, always, always have a brand new page for your reference list. It's centered, the word references. It's not underlined, it's not italicized in the title, it's not boldface. Each entry does need to be alphabetical order, so that was something that I noticed on several papers. So go back and look at those first letters in each of your entry and look to see if it is indeed alphabetized. If you have a number as the beginning of a title, that number, those number ones come first before the letters. You will have a hanging indent for each entry. Each one is double spaced. There are no extra spaces between one entry to the next. So that hanging indent, that means that the second and any subsequent lines are indented 5 spaces in from the edge of the margin. The next thing that you need to remember, it's last name of the author, comma, then you have any initials that you can find, generally a first name and a middle name. The year is included in parentheses behind the authors. There is a period. The title, especially if it's a journal, the title starts with a capital letter at the beginning, but all of your other words are lowercase. Now, after a colon, the next word after does have a capital letter, and then the rest of those are lowercase. You will italicize the names of any journals, but several people got confused. They either had capital letters for every word in the title, or they were italicizing the title of a website. If there is a journal volume number, it needs to be italicized. Now, one thing I will say about all 4 of these references, they look like they are very reputable references in that they all have an author's name, they all have dates, they all have titles, they even have issue numbers and page numbers. And I know that for a lot of our research, you guys found websites. So if I pull open just one example of a website, this one, if somebody was looking for something about, the benefits of teaching reading to small children, you could use this. You have the title, Benefits of Early Reading. If you were to pull open like Citation Generator or any of those different things, and you paste in the web address and you search the website, here's what they found. They found the URL, they found the website title, they found the article title, they figured out what date you looked at it, but what they're saying they couldn't find was the publisher or sponsor and the date published. The best thing to do, go back to your website. One thing I noticed, there's a lot of advertisements on this page. It just may not be the most reputable. You might be able to find a journal article that would be better, but if not, if this is the one that you needed to use, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, well, the copyright's 2010, so that would be the date you would use, and Langvid Language Training looks like it's the company that put that together. So I would recommend going ahead and pasting in that Langvid Corporation and the electronically published. It was 2010, and actually you guys don't need the date that it was accessed, so when we click Create Citation, it shows our citation, but you would be able to pull out October 6, 2017 and merely leave in retrieved from, and then you have the web address. One of the things about doing it this way, now when you go to do your in-text citations, you may use this part as your citation. Now notice in this example, they capitalized all words, so the other thing you would want to do before you submit your paper, lowercase e, lowercase r, I would probably go ahead and do a colon here, and then the y would be, or the w would be capitalized, but then your t would be lowercase, y would be lower, and so on. So to wrap up, how did your paper compare? Do you see any specific mistakes? If you do still have questions and you absolutely cannot identify where any of your errors were, please contact me and I will go through each paper on an individual basis. I hope this helped.